Well, welcome to our next episode of Sit Down with SymTrain, and it's our continuation of Is AI a Threat to Contact Center Jobs? I'm joined again by Jim, my wonderful co-host for the day. And I know last time we went through all sorts of content around how AI can help kind of augment life in the call center, what it can and can't do, and where you can and can't use it. And Jim, you were still like bursting at the seams with more things that you wanted to talk about and get through. So I wanted to start with giving you a little bit more time and specifically gearing you around when you bring on new customers or you're starting to talk to new people that are kind of coming into this space. What kind of things are you guiding them around AI? And what kind of questions or asks are they even showing up with in the first place?
Yeah, so it's so much fun, and I'm so excited about today because I know we're going to give everybody a surprise because we actually have a case study now, which I'm excited to get into. But first and foremost, let's talk about that. So here's the cool part: if you're in the contact center space and you're talking to someone, and the first thing they say, is like, "Hey, I really need a contact center," blah 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 blah, and you talk about how artificial intelligence can gather insights, speech can add insights, and then typically like when do you want to launch? Oh, we need to launch quickly, right? I mean, everybody has to launch today. And then when you talk about training, they're always saying, typically their training is like, well, it's like 2 weeks and it's classroom style setting, which I don't really think is the best thing to do, right? So we start talking about these simulators and how Etech has been fortunate enough to be able to reduce training times. And I know that we've done this together. We were able to launch, and I know you'll get into it more deeper than I can, but when you have a training program and you can reduce it by 40%, that literally gets you ready quicker, faster. But it's funny, to your original question, not a lot of people are thinking about AI in training. They're thinking about AI as the speech analytics, thinking about the data, thinking about post-call. And what we've done over the last couple of years together is we're revolutionizing how we're utilizing it in training. That's pretty much the biggest thing I can talk about. And I think when you look at it scaling, I think you are the epitome of the case study that helped us recently. And I think it's just too important for you not to share what we just went through, because that's the beautiful case study of what just happened recently.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, we've seen so much that AI, people come in and they immediately start thinking about it in terms of removing interactions or taking something over, or it's kind of like this either or situation. And in reality, we're not getting rid of most of these things, right? Like people still want to talk to a human. They still need to talk to a human in many situations, but if they're already in the mindset of we want to augment or change or do these kind of things, it also helps you bring in that mindset of doing something new and doing something different and being open to that kind of a context. And I think that that's really where you can start getting creative with these kind of things. So, in terms of the specific kind of case study that we're talking about, the other thing that we see in AI is that people try to fix things that get repeated every day over and over. Like, what's your top call driver? What's your top thing that you want to kind of remove? And what we miss out on a lot of times are things like seasonality. So we had a customer that is working through what they do every year, and it's responding to insurance claims around hurricane season, right? Every year, we're going to get hit by hurricanes in the US. We don't exactly know when, we don't know how bad, we don't know how many, and we don't know what kind of things are going to happen from a damage perspective, from a human perspective. What do we actually need to be doing to be prepared for that situation? But it's not just this kind of situation that happens on this seasonality time. You think about things like tax season, you think about back to school, you think about annual sales. There are things that happen all the time that we typically don't think about, even in a contact center setting, until it's time to deal with them again. So while we're using AI in these all year, very repetitive situations, we're not thinking about how we can use it for the things that are going to come up, but maybe aren't top of mind for you every day. So I see these as being a different entry point that we got to bring up and we got to use for this AI situation, right? What's great about it is it means you've already done it before. All of these customers have done it once, twice, 100 times, but they're not looking at that data or using it to determine what we can actually do to make this situation better or be more prepared for it next time. And I think that preparing for it is really the part that came into, that came into work here. So knowing that something was coming, but not knowing exactly when, we got to work with Etech on this situation, and they brought it to us and said, we need to talk about it.
Yeah, so if you remember, if you think about these seasonal events, which we've been doing for a long time together, and we reached out to you, and and if you remember, I said, hey, Liz, I need to staff 800 people in 72 hours. What can you do for us? And I think it's just a great opportunity for you to talk about what we've done. And I know people smarter than me actually did all the work, like you and the teams here. But I just thought it was amazing that what you were able to help us accomplish to prepare for this recent hurricane.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it is funny to think of, we get the call occasionally of we need to staff 800 agents. That in and of itself isn't such an interesting thing, but saying I need to do it in 72 hours is a very different world in general. And really the use case here was that knowing that we were coming into storm season, even months ahead of time, the groups got together and said, hey, every year this happens, and we get whatever notice we get from when the storm shows up on the radar, right? We can't prepare for it too early. We have to figure out, when do we need butts in seats? When do we need people answering these phones? And how do we make sure that they're fully prepared to handle a very difficult conversation that may come with starting a claim for losing a home? That's not something that is ever an easy conversation, let alone maybe the first time that you've had to take a call in a call center, and that's what you're going to be handling this next day. So with this, we really took on going through all the back processes. How do we think back from the time that this is going to happen to see what can we do to creatively help for this situation, knowing that it's going to show up? What's great is that we could think about using AI in multiple different places along the way to staff and prepare this team. So when you think about being able to find the right people to handle a situation like this, you can use AI and what you've learned from prior seasons, prior calls, knowing what this is going to take to actually help assess candidates before they come in the door. You know roughly what timing you're going to need them for, what kind of skill set they're going to need, and you can actually test them for things like empathy and how well they come across in a phone call before you put them in the situation of needing to answer that call. It also gives them the chance to say, am I the right person to be handling this phone call? Right. I think there's also this opt-out item that we owe every employee that's coming in to say, am I going to be the right person to take these calls? And do I want to be spending my time this summer actually helping these people through this situation, which can be kind of a rough place to start. From there, once you've assessed the team and brought in the right people that you want to use, the training in 72 hours becomes really the difficult piece. So this is where we definitely got approached saying, we need these people. We need to make sure that they're going to be good to go in 72 hours. So we did a great trial run a couple months ago. We actually got everybody together. We reviewed what had happened in previous seasons. We looked at how we could create content based on their calls, their stats, their data, to build simulations that allowed these agents to practice what they were really going to be doing. There's only so much classroom time that you can sit down and tell someone what they need to do, rather than actually giving them the chance to experience it and make sure that they're doing it correctly. So we worked with the teams to build out an entirely new process for training. And I want to stress this because I think it's a big part of the conversation we had last time, is that AI doesn't become this supplemental item that you just throw on top of your current processes. It really has to change the way that you operate in general and allow you to rethink what's the right way that I should be using the various technologies that I have in place to get these done. So we worked with the team and with a great client that we share to kind of pull this together, that said, what we need is to make sure our agents are prepared to pass a test that we actually know that they're certified to do these kind of things, and that we can do it in less than 72 hours to get them up and running. We staffed the team. We actually did a full test run and had everybody running through simulations for 2 full days to get through all of the content that they needed. And what was awesome is we actually saw empathy scores go up. We saw great results from this kind of conversation. We looked at what does our client actually need to see, what do we need to see to make sure it works, and how do we confirm that that actually gave us what we needed to do.
Yeah, it's really good when you talk about results. When you think about that, I mean, the other result I think that we're missing, when you're looking at this AI, and again, I stick behind my statement, AI is not replacing human beings, because the more you get, and you know this, like the more resources you need, I say that some AI will replace, as we know, some mundane jobs. I get it, but there's trajectory for people to actually build on that and become better at it. And when we talk about these results, here's one I think a simple one that I think we miss. In the old days of contact centers, remember, I'm old. I had a green screen. I started as an agent. I remember the days of role playing, and I remember you were in this classroom and. Now, transparently, Liz, you and I'd be in the room together. We're friends. We'd be talking. We're not really scoring ourselves fairly. Let's be clear, right? And I think that's a big miss because when you use, and what I saw from this is it actually helped us because, to your point, when you talk about certification, if I'm doing something for a potential client, I have to be certified that I'm able to take that first call. So there's 2 results that I'll talk about, and then I want your input as well. But the 2 better results I've seen personally is number 1, I get that certification. So I don't have to rely on a human being to certify that the agent's able to take that call. I think that's important to know because I can certify, as you know, 800 people simultaneously, which you can't do if you're doing a human. Okay. The other thing I would think about, right, when you talk about that certification process, I also look at, in my day, everybody would talk about, well, as you start, we're going to give you 2, 3, 4 weeks to get up to speed. I think that's another thing that we are missing in the results side. Because if I'm a person, and I'm not saying you hire everybody off the street that's never been in a call center, but if we're going to be transparent, we all know we get people who've been in customer service but never taken a live call day in their life. How do you prepare them better? See, I think if you let me practice, which I know we do, and I took 40, 50, 60 calls before I went live to talk to a real human being, I think that's another result that we're missing to measure. I know we measure it, but I think that's just another. If I was able to get, because think about what you talk about, right? It's confidence, right? How do I build someone's confidence, right? Repetitive. John Maxwell tells you every time, repeat it 8 times. Well, we like 80, but 8, still good, right? 80, if you repeat that and you're able to use a simulation to do that, that is going to arm that employee so much better than if they just practice on all of your customers. So that's the 2 I think that we fit. But listen, just talking about that, like what other results do you see besides the 2 that I have that I don't think we talk about enough? I think those are good results. What else?
I think those are amazing results. And I also think that's a great way to kind of even frame the way that we look at results. I was reading something this morning that was about the fact that all of us in most of our lives are sitting on the side of customer support where we need support from somebody else, right? In one instance, we may be running a line of business where we understand that customer's coming in. The rest of us are experiencing this as an end user every day, and being able to give agents something to practice on that isn't me as your end customer that needs help is huge. You think about this ability to build their confidence and competence, and using learned behaviors that we know actually work and what gives us proven results is how you use this data and this AI to really build out an agent that feels great about what they're doing and that isn't just guessing their way through something. We're telling them what we know works, not what we think works or what might work. Sometimes it's really, this is how you're going to practice what works. And I think one of the big results that comes out of this too, and it's a perfect place for looking at AI, is the nesting period. So we go so many times from training to on the floor, and you end up in this, how do I get someone from they learned everything to they're actually performing at that right level, and being able to supplement the time, the human capital that you're talking about of, I need to sit next to my supervisor, I need to sit next to a tenured agent next to me, I need to be working with people that know what's going on. How do you use AI in that situation to actually have that expertise available and around for practice without needing the human next to you to take up that time? You speed up nesting, you speed up confidence and competence and getting somebody ready to be on the floor. And I think that's, the other part that can be a little bit harder to tell is this whole concept of like sentiment scoring.
Mhm.
How do we actually know what an agent is feeling and what they're conveying to a customer once they get on the phone? It's very hard to measure this, and it's very hard to especially use human to human interaction to say you're always doing this well or you're not always doing this well. So I think, one of the big ones in this case in particular that we looked at was the empathy score of these users. And it was rated in multiple different ways. Rated through AI in their practice. How are people actually doing this? Are they meeting all the keywords? Are they meeting the tone and the sentiment that they need to get out here? We actually had the client call in and do test runs and pretend that they were part of this situation so that we could get at that real gut check human feel of, are they being empathetic? Is it coming across in a genuine capacity? Because that's also something that you can't replicate with a machine. And it can even be hard to replicate cross-culturally. Understanding how each of us, communicate with each other and being able to be authentically human and empathize with our fellow man is a big deal. And it's something that we actually need to measure and see that result. So it is something that we saw a giant improvement in this. And when I think about being able to focus an agent on thinking about their empathy, it's only because they're confident in the conversation that they're having to be able to do that. If you're having to double check and think about all the different little things that you have to go through in your head, then being able to genuinely be there for your customer is a really tough spot to try and be in. So giving them this AI-based way to practice is a huge plus in this case. So, kind of like wrapping up the conversation around just the case study in general comes from a creative customer willing to work with us on a solution that maybe they hadn't thought about trying to solve before. How do I fix this seasonal issue? Teams coming together to say, what are all the points that we can actually incorporate different ways of measuring and using the behavior that we've already seen to better process this kind of thing, and then actually testing it and making sure that it was really effective in an environment where we knew we could measure results before we had to throw everybody out on the floor and be ready to go with a standard customer.
Yeah, and I think the other one you hit up earlier too, like when you think about it, we probably trained hundreds of extra people. And during that
Yeah.
process, as you know, we were able to identify the ones, eh, probably, which, in the old days of contact centers, without this technology, you really didn't have that luxury, right? And our customers, was very transparent. Hey, hire as many as you can, right? Over so that we make sure we get the right people. And in the old days, think about it. When would you know that that was the right person? After you listen to their calls. But doing this pre-enrollment was so huge. And I mean, that is real money when you think about it, because while it costs you a little bit of money to bring them in, you onboard them, and you're getting them through this training, you're able to identify within a couple days, and in our case, it was hours, as you know, in a few hours, like, this might not be for you, right? And I think that is showing more of a customer experience instead of putting the old days of putting a button in a seat, right? Because like I always said, anybody can answer your call. Anybody in the world, and they can do it cheaper, they can do it anywhere. But the real thing is if you really want to deliver the experience, you need to have the right people, processes, and technology to make it effortless for your customer. And, I stand behind my comments about AI is not replacing people.
Mm-hmm.
I said this in 2003. In 2003, there's a Jim Iyoob quote out there. It is not your decision to tell me how to contact you. It's mine. So these people who believe that they're going to replace all these agents in the call centers across the country and no one's going to call, they are smoking something that's whatever. But it's just not going to happen, right?
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, if you believe and care about your customer, you will let me contact you in my choice of medium, not yours.
Yes.
And I refuse to use some of the brands, by the way, who refuse to follow that. Because again, will it reduce some agents? Probably, on some easy stuff we talked about. Will it open up more opportunities? 100%.
Yep.
Because remember, we all talk about this. This is a machine. This machine needs people to program, code, test, like we just talked about. And you guys do a great job at it, as you know. But remember, that is an opportunity to promote people in your organization to get into these, right? So if you think about an agent, and everybody talks bad about the agents, which I disagree with, like, oh, it's just an entry level position. Not necessarily, because depending on where you want to go with your career, there is huge opportunity to grow into this AI world. So while you might replace an agent who said, does this come in red or yellow? Yes, with a bot as an example, that person now becomes more valuable because now you teach them the tools to train some of these machines that are going to help improve the customer experience. And we talk about that repetition. I remember my first call. I remember back in, it was old, green screens. But I remember, Liz, I used to take 2 or 3 calls. They would pull you off the phone, bring you into a training room. We would listen to a call together, all of us. We would all score that call together, and all of us are never aligned. You know that because we're all going to look because they're our friends. And when you look at where technology has come and what you can do to prepare a person to take a call, it is
It's
huge.
crazy.
It
It's
is
crazy.
nuts that we have this technology that can prepare someone to do their job. I go back to when I travel myself with my wife. She hates traveling with me, as you know that, because when I go someplace and I'm in, a service industry and someone is either rude, not prepared, doesn't know their job, the first thing I say to them is, let me ask you this. When they hired you through the onboarding process, did they tell you to be dealing with the public? I'm just wondering, right? Because that's your only job. You are the customer
Yep.
facing of this brand. And the
Yep.
way you're representing that brand tells me a couple things. A, they didn't tell you. B, they didn't train you. And with all these tools out there, it can be changed. We can literally improve experience across the board in a multitude of avenues. And we all
I
know people will spend
completely
more
agree.
money for people that who they will pay more for a better customer experience. I have a daughter. She's 21, and Melissa, our Dean of Leadership Development, tells me I spoil her all the time. But she is one of those people that's all about the brand. And if that brand ever upsets her, you can hear about it. But I will tell you what's more important. She picks up her phone and shows me when she buys these expensive things that I'm not going to talk about, which I disagree with, by the way. But you probably have the same, Liz. But she will show me the entire journey from the time she placed the order until the time it gets delivered. She comes down the steps in my house before the guy is at the front door to deliver her package.
Knows it's there.
And she just brags about that whole entire experience because that's what people want. It's about the experience to them. But that's all
It
I had to
is.
say. I'll let you wrap us up with last thoughts and give everybody a couple minutes back in their day. If they have any questions, we're here to answer.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love, the end experience that you're talking about there too is how much we've seen the improvement of all of these different parts of our journeys with AI. So I know I had an issue last week that my internet was out for 2 full days, and I spent time going through the knowledge base, through the website, checking out the outage centers. How do I get through the bots? How do I see where I'm going? But then by the time I actually got to an agent, I ended up being transferred 7 times in 2.5 hours, and my issue never got resolved.
Oh,
And when you see how good things have gotten from using AI in the places that aren't human assisted, you realize how problematic it is not to use AI in the places that are human assisted, because My expectation now is that by the time that I've had a great experience trying to use multiple of these other solutions, when I talk to an agent, that's really the expert. And that's what customers
Right.
expect, is that they get on the phone and they're going to get their job to set them up for that success and to give them all the tools that they need to do that, because we're not replacing that person. We don't have a way that AI is handling all of our issues, and there are just going to be times that we don't want them to. I fully agree with you that the way that customers want to contact us is the right way to do that. And we can certainly shift that behavior one way or another. But the only way that you shift that behavior is making the experience so good in those other areas that someone chooses to discuss things with you there, and they make the choice to move over. So I think we owe it to our agents, to our teams, to our people, to really use AI in a way that helps promote their growth, promote their sanity, promote their confidence, and really doing this during the day. So I think I love that last story, Jim, and I think that really wraps up with exactly what I was thinking as well.
And imagine that. I will close with one more thought, because you just gave me another thought, because my mind goes crazy. First of all, I learned something about you today. I would never go through the self-serve, by the way. I would just call them, I'm paying you, fix it. But anyway, I'm to learn. The other thing we're thinking about, let's talk about how this can help with attrition.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine we say in our company statements, everybody says we supply you with the tools you need to do your job. Imagine if you made it effortless for your agents. Imagine what would happen to your attrition. Because we know at Etech, our attrition still have a little bit of it, but it's stellar, world class in the industry. But that's because we give them the tools to make their job successful.
Right. Right. And
And
you
I think
also
people
allow
miss
them
that
to
too.
access, you give them the same benefit, right? We have tools, we've built ways for you to practice, we've built ways for you to upskill, get better, learn something new. And if you allow the agents to also self-select into these kind of journeys and help learn on their own schedule, it's amazing how much giving them the autonomy to make those decisions and choose their adventure too really helps out and gives them the support that they want. I think that's a great other metric that you may not have.
Yeah, absolutely. Give them a minute if there's any questions. We're happy to answer them. But also, I want to be conscious of everybody's time. You can contact Liz or myself via LinkedIn. We're absolutely happy to answer any questions, and happy to do another one of these. So we do have one. So Melissa, she wants another podcast. Attrition and AI help you need. I love it. So let's do this. Melissa, for those of you who don't know, is Etech's Dean of Leadership Development. She will be hosting us for that, because there's nobody better in the business that knows about attrition than her, and she will host us for that. I love that idea, Melissa. You are our guest speaker for Liz and I. We'll do our coffee. She does a coffee roundtable, Liz. It's awesome. You're gonna love it.
Perfect.
We will do that for sure. And by the way, again, everybody in the audience, send us those suggestions on LinkedIn. Let us know. Our teams will put together any content you want. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Liz, as always, it's a pleasure. And thank you so much for being such a trusted advisor to us and a partner. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week.
Thanks for joining us with Sit Down with SymTrain, everybody. We'll see you again soon.